Hello guys! So, we have new perks on the artifact and good ones. And one of them is amazing for ignition builds. I was planning a Well of Radiance build, but the new Solar Super Song of Flame, it's just so good. Even in Grandmasters, it absolutely destroys everything. So, let's focus on a simple but very destructive build. I'm going to update the build I made months ago, a build with the exotic Dawn Chorus. What it does is, your Daybreak projectiles deal more damage and scorch targets on impact. Your Scorch is improved and you gain a small amount of melee energy when your Scorch damages a target. We don't really care about the first part because we are going to use Song of Flame instead of Daybreak, but the second part is really important. Our Scorch is improved and we get a small amount of melee energy when our Scorch damages a target. So two things going on for us. Improved Scorch is a 200% bonus. So now when enemies Scorch, basically when they burn, that damage is increased in 200%. It's awesome, really good. And the second part is we get 5% melee energy per damage tick. So when they're burning, it's like a damage over time. For each tick, we get 5% melee energy back. This is amazing because it allows us to have our melee charge really fast. And our melee will trigger an ignition. And an ignition will spread a lot of scorch, burn to enemies. Our subclass will be Solar. Why? Because we have access to Ember of Ashes. This fragment will allow you to apply more Scorch stacks to targets. So basically the way Ignition works is, when you Scorch a target, you are putting stacks of Scorch on that target. When those stacks reach 100, the target ignites. With Ember of Ashes, it increases the number of Scorch stacks you apply to targets by around 50% in most cases. So it's easier and faster to trigger an ignition, and that's one of the reasons Solar will be better for this build. Our second fragment is Ember of Searing. Defeating a Scorch targets grant melee energy and creates a fire sprite. Most enemies we kill will be Scorched, so we get tons of melee energy, and we're gonna use Ember of Mercy. With Ember of Mercy, when we pick those fire sprites, we will get Restoration. Restoration is very important because it will give us survivability. We can't do damage if we are dead. And the last fragment that makes this build amazing is Ember of Shar. Your Solar Ignitions spread Scorch to affected targets. So, you trigger an ignition and the enemies around, if they survive that ignition, they will become Scorched. An ignition applies 40 Scorch stacks, 60 with Ember of Ashes, and we are using Ember of Ashes. And they apply Scorch to enemies damaged by the ignition explosion. So now, enemies that survive the explosion are burning and have 60 stacks of Scorch. But guys, if we are using an ignition build, we should be using a solar weapon with incandescent. And there's a lot of weapons now with incandescent. And by the way, I'm really curious, what is your favorite incandescent weapon in the game? There's so many now. Let me know in the comments. Honestly, I would really like to know. But back to the video. What incandescent does is, defeating a target spreads Scorch to those nearby. How much Scorch, you ask? It applies 30 Scorch stacks. 40 if we have Ember of Ashes, which we do. So now, the enemies, they will already at 60 because of the first ignition. And now, when we kill enemies with incandescent, it will Scorch 40. So 60 plus 40 is 100. So another ignition. That's why people are doing so many ignitions just with their weapons. It's because of Ember of Shar. Our super of choice is Song of Flame. It's just so good. You do a lot of damage, you get a lot of resistance. Allies get resistance as well. It's an amazing super, especially in Grandmaster's Nightfalls. And my class ability is Phoenix Dive. I like it because it has a shorter cooldown and allows me to be more mobile. Our melee is the Incinerator Snap. This melee is amazing with this build. Why? Because of Ember of Ashes, we can trigger an ignition in one snap. If all the projectiles hit the enemy, it will ignite. And guys, an ignition will stun unstoppable champions. And on our grenade, I honestly really like the healing grenade. It saves me so many times. You can go with the fusion grenade if you want to do more damage, if you want to be more offensive. Fusion grenade is amazing. It will explode twice because we are using Touch of Flame. But for me, it's healing grenade. In our aspects, Touch of Flame is one. Why? Because if you're using a fusion grenade, it will explode twice, and if you're using a healing grenade, it will give you restoration times 2, which is really strong. It's actually the same as a Well of Radiance now. And our second aspect is Alien. Alien, I really like it. So basically what it does is it's like a solar mortar that lobs flaming projectiles at distant targets, and targets damaged by it are scorched. And with Ember of Ashes, enemies will ignite in 3 alien shots. That's the reason I really like it. And talking about the new artifact perks, I updated this build especially because we have a new perk named Solar Fulmination. Your ignitions do increased damage and have increased radius. So this is why I can't say no to damage. So I like it. I like it a lot. So for this build, I want you to focus on 2 artifact perks: Solar Fulmination and Radiant Orbs. While you have a solar subclass, picking up orbs will make you radiant, and radiant, guys, is a 25% weapon damage increase. Really good. Stats wise, always go for 100 resilience because it will give you 30% damage resistance, and I like to have 100 discipline because I want to have my healing grenade as fast as I can. I go for 70 strength, not 100, because I also want to have 70 recovery, and you'll see why. It's because the mods. And speaking about mods, let's check them. On our helmet, I go with Heavy Ammo Finder. We use our heavy a lot with this build, so I want to have as much heavy as I can, and I use Heavy Ammo Scout so I can help my teammates having heavy as well. In Harmonic Siphon, we're gonna use a solar primary, so this way we generate tons of orbs. On our gloves, I use Font of Vigor. Font of Vigor will give me 30 points in strength, so now I will have 100 when I have an Armor Charge. Armor Charge, we get them when we collect Orbs of Power. Then I use Focusing Strike. It grants me class ability when I do damage with a power melee, and Impact Induction. It will give me Grenade when I do damage with a power melee. On our chest, I always use resist mods, 1 for each, 1 arc, 1 solar, 1 void, because if you are dead, you can't do damage. On our boots, I use 1 solar weapon surge. Our weapons will be solar, so this way when we have an armor charge, we'll also deal 10% more damage with our solar weapons. I use 1 solar scavenger because I want to have as much heavy ammo to my Dragon's Breath. In this build I'm using Dragon's Breath a lot, and recuperation. I will get health back when I pick an Orb of Power. On our class item, I'm going with Powerful Attraction, so when I use my Phoenix Dive, I'll automatically collect the nearby Orbs of Power, and these Orbs of Power will give me armor charges, so I'll do more damage with my solar weapon. I will have my fonts. This one is really good for this build. And time dilation. So now my decaying armor charges have longer timer, so more timer on my fonts and more timer on my weapon damage. And last but not least, proximity ward. I really like proximity ward, so I get a powerful overshield while doing a finisher. And guys, this is the build. The video was actually 20 minutes long, but then I tried to cut some parts off. I don't know. Well, it is what it is. Hopefully you'll enjoy the video, guys. Let me know what you think. Let me know your favorite incandescent weapon. Let me know what you're using. I know a lot of players do not have Zauli's Bane, so just let me know what you're using. I'm really curious. And that's it, guys. See you, thank you, and say something nice. Bye, guys.